Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversation with Calvin with Your Species. Once again, I'm wired because there's a lot of stuff up here. I got to get it out. I'm sitting here with Tony Stephens and Bill Sarine. I said that right. Bill Sarine?
Actually, it's Sarine.
Sarine. Okay. See, I'm glad I asked. I'm a smart guy. Bill Sarine, and we're gonna talk about this most unbelievable documentary that they're part of, and they made that's going to be appearing in the Garden State Film Festival about Helen Keller. And as I'm preparing for this, I'm doing a little. I mean, I know who Helen Keller was because that's part of my generation. I need to know, but the things that we're going to learn now and the things you're going to learn from this documentary will blow you away because she's just one of the most remarkable people ever lived and what she's accomplished in her life. I'm so grateful for you guys in my own little small microcosmic world for having done this because it's so needed. Um, and this is it's a special interview for me for a lot of reasons. One buried in the fiber of this interview is the movie Casablanca, which has nothing to do with the interview, and that's also a bonding thing for me with Bill and Tony, and we'll talk about that later. So this monologue is done. I'm going to introduce Tony Stephens and Bill Sarine. And if you guys want to say a couple of words, a little background stuff, please do. And then we're going to jump in to our interview about Helen Keller and your movie, most importantly, Possibilities, which I'm holding up the movie poster. All right, take it away, guys.
No, yeah, thanks, Calvin. I'll jump in, but to be honest, I'm like Ringo and the Beatles. I'm just happy to be here, right? I mean, Bill is the one that really did all the amazing work putting the documentary film Possibilities together. My job is I run communications for the American Foundation for the Blind.
Okay.
A lot of folks know about Helen Keller from maybe watching the movie The Miracle Worker, the big breakthrough moment when she's only like 7 years old, and Anne Sullivan is, finally breaks through with her at the well in Tuscumbia, Alabama, where she lived on a farm growing up as a young girl. But that was the start of her life, right? And she had an amazing life for many, many years. She lived all the way to 1968. She was, 88 years old almost. I think she was 87 when she passed away. Uh, the half that life she spent working for the American Foundation for the Blind. We were ourselves created in 1921 in New York City. And she pretty much came on board in 1924 and was our sort of chief ambassador, if you will, working to just really break down stigma, stereotypes around disabilities. But then her world grew much, much larger as Truman brought her in to be an ambassador for peace after World War II. She'd written tons of books. There's things and letters and correspondence, and she was so prolific, an amazing story. But Bill was the anchor at piecing together so much of her life, but that even taking it further into this next world. It spoke to me a lot and was an honor to be asked to be, featured a little bit in the documentary as one of the voices, the talking heads in it. But I've been legally blind my whole life. Went totally blind when I was 15 years old. And it was just a great opportunity because what the documentary, and Bill can tell us much better than I can, obviously, because it was through his lens that he pieced everything together. But it really does sort of bring Helen into the 21st century, but through other voices, not just my own voice, but so many other voices in the documentary that it features, and really sort of pulls the lens back on what is it like to be someone blind today? What's it like to be someone deafblind and walking in the shadows of Helen Keller? So, but I'm, running communications for AFB, and it's kind of my day job. But it's been so exciting to sort of come on as a producer as well, helping Bill, I think, therapeutically get this over the line. Because anybody that's never made a film knows it's a lot of passion and a lot of love. And so I was there, kind of the cheerleader at the very end on the the final lap. So, but yeah, that's where I am. I live in Baltimore, Maryland, with my guide dog Nougat. He's my fourth dog from a place called the CNI in Jersey. So he's excited to get back to the Garden State Film Festival, to his home state,
Great.
and represent Jersey.
That's great. Thank you, Tony. Bill.
Uh, Thank you very much, Calvin. Thanks for having us on your show. I really appreciate it. My name is Bill Sarine. I was the director, producer of Possibilities, and this represented a really, really fun opportunity for me. We ground this very much in Helen Keller's legacy and some of the kind of tentpole moments of her life. but we expand off into like over 30 individuals who are currently living with vision loss and talking about joys, challenges, triumphs, obstacles, all kinds of things. And a lot of that's just about demystifying vision loss. A lot of this is just about normalizing, uh, you know, uh, the issues surrounding vision loss kind of on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
And I went into this, I had no blind friends. Now I have a bunch, which is really cool.
You're
Um,
honorary blind at this point, Bill.
exactly, I'm honoring. But it's it really is it's so much fun to get new perspective on life and to meet new people and to do this kind of thing. This is also my first documentary. I've worked on mostly narrative films in my life. This is my first doc, and documentary in a way is a little bit the reverse of scripted, where scripted you're kind of going in with a very, very specific plan and you're kind of following that roadmap to a T. And documentary, you're going in with an idea, and then often the footage and the people are going to take you on a journey that maybe is not exactly the one you expected. And that was certainly the case here. I think the thing that I was definitely taken back by, really, that hit me hard was the amount of vulnerability and truth and stories that were shared with me. It really puts a lot of pressure, like, hey, don't mess this up. These people are not getting paid. They're giving of themselves at a very high level. And you really want to do justice to that. And you want to make sure that the messages are getting through and the stories are getting through. My working title, I'm probably not even supposed to say this. My working title that I had in my mind, which was just kind of like a North Star, right? It was sort of like just something that you could like point everything to and go, if it doesn't fit through that filter, we probably shouldn't be putting it in the movie, kind of thing. It was, you remember back in the 70s, there was that book called Everything You Want to Know About Sex and Weren't Afraid to Ask.
Yeah, sure.
My working title was basically, everything the blind and low vision community wanted you to know and nobody bothered to ask.
Interesting.
And that was sort of like, that was just my sort of like a North Star going, because a lot of things in here were just uncomfortable too. And it was like, hey, we gotta talk about everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but it also shouldn't be depressing, because I mean, the name is possibilities. You should come away with some optimism for the future and hopefully a little bit of drive to make the future different.
Okay. Uh, a little technical question.
Sure.
I'm not so up on this, but why did you choose to specifically make this documentary film with an open audio description?
Yeah, so for folks who don't know, audio description is how blind people watch movies. And it basically is a dialogue track that accompanies the film, and everything that's not dialogue in the movie, or either scripted or unscripted, um, it describes all of the action, all of the B-roll, all the images that you're seeing, so that a blind person can access the film.
Wow. Wow. I have no
So
clue about that.
yeah, so that's typically, it's a post-production process. It kind of happens in what they call finishing or even in localization. Um, and the way I came into this film to start with, to be honest, is through a friend of mine who's a voice actor, and he was doing audio description. But he's an old friend of mine that I've known forever. I live in LA right now. He's my oldest Los Angeles friend, and we were talking about it. And he told me he was doing audio description. I didn't even know what that was. I was like, okay, so like voiceover, got it. And the more we started talking about it, I realized that you know, if you're doing subtitles, it's kind of one for one, right? Whatever somebody says are the words that come up on the screen. If you're doing audio description, there's a subjective element. And so as a filmmaker, I didn't really like the idea that somebody else was reinterpreting a film, and I said, I don't think a lot of directors are even aware of this, that their film is, you know, if the shot is guy walks into a room, I could shoot that in 500 different ways. I might just shoot his feet. But the reason you shot it that way was very deliberate. There's a message behind that, and there's a meaning behind that. And so the idea that films are just being reinterpreted by people who weren't attached to the creative in the first place, I honestly didn't love that. And so it kind of began a dialogue about how could we merge audio description more into the production process. And so we made a very deliberate decision right up front that audio description was going to be part of the filmmaking and part of the post-production process and not like an afterthought. We weren't just going to back into time code. We were going to inform time code with audio description. And so, I said that up front thinking, oh, this will be fun. And then it turned out to be a massive undertaking because, it's you can no longer just throw B-roll over talking heads. Now you need to be strategic about where B-roll is going and think about the pacing of that and how that's all going to work. But I'm really, really glad we did it. And I don't even think we got it perfect. I think it's a step in a direction. And I think other folks can take it from there and go, hey, love what you guys did there. Here's a way we can do that even better. And I love that. It's supposed to drive forward momentum, really.
Yeah. Wow. So really at the precipice of a whole, which leads me into my next, it's a good segue, and that next question that what could this film, based on some of the stuff I just heard you say, mean for accessible entertainment, like in the future?
Tony, why don't you say some stuff?
Yeah. So one of my many hats I've worn was on the FCC Disability Advisory Committee, where we did a lot of work trying to expand audio description, right? It's still, when you compare it to like closed captioning for the deaf, hard of hearing community, it's still significantly much lower. I mean, the nice thing is most mainstream releases now are going to have audio description. A lot of the primetime shows have audio description. The major networks have to have it. But it's like the Olympics, NBC, Universal's done a great job with getting in live events like Macy's Parade in the Olympics. Um, there there are a lot of different places it exists. The thing about the film is the idea that Bill really, I think, said it so much better than I'm doing, in that bringing it not just as an afterthought, right? Not bringing it after finishing, but to bring it in the process itself, because it's a creative element. And when done right, Satana, who does the voice acting on this film for us, like, she's incredible. I mean, she's done a lot of other great places of her voice is out there on major streaming platforms as the audio describer. But in this sense, it's like the narrator. And it reminds me of almost like a really good, like, old time radio from the 1930s, where they would, or news radio segments from, like, Edward R. Murrow and people like that in England and in Europe during the war, World War II, where they set the scene, right? And they find a way within their newscast or their story to really describe things and to make it very powerful, and to bring the listener not just in the eye but in the ear, to more immerse them into the imagination that's being played out in front of them on the screen. So, I think in a lot of ways, my hope is we'll start to see more open audio description and finding ways, even if it's going to be on a separate audio program feed, which is how it's typically done now. You can turn it on anybody can turn it on their television or their phone apps on certain major apps. You'll see a little, thing that's like next to the closed caption. You'll see a thing for AD, for audio description, and you can turn it on. But, the directors don't always have a say in how that turns out. And it's nice to think that, there is a way that you can bring audio description further up into the development process of a project and really make it something that's not just as invigorating and inspiring, but, people, they might be cooking in the kitchen with a television on and a movie playing, and it paints a picture for them even though their eyes aren't always glued to the screen. Just the same way that you might be at a bar watching a game with closed captioning on to see what the announcers are saying.
Mhm.
I'll just add, Tony, that I think one of the biggest moments for me, because you and I had gone through this movie a couple times when we were in the process of making it, and other folks that have worked on the film. But I think the first time we screened it, which I think was down in Dallas for like a donor screening that we did down there, and probably 30 or 40% of the audience was blind,
Yeah.
which is very unusual for I think for a normal movie theater. And the typical experience, I think, with audio description in the theater is, you get a headset that may or may not work correctly,
Yeah.
may or may not have, a good connection in the little jack in the seat, and you may or may not be getting a great experience. And I think the resounding opinion from folks in the room there was just like, this is really fun that we're all just watching the same movie together. Like
Yeah.
we're all just enjoying this film, together without us being these separate experiences.
Right. I just made an interesting observation. Um, uh, I don't know what it means, but it's this little synchronistic thing. We're all wearing hats.
This is
Uh,
my thinking cap.
Yeah.
so that's something. I don't know
That's
what it
something.
means. It's something I don't know what it means, but I think it's great. That's a bonding thing.
It is.
I'm just comfortable. It's funny when I started my journalism career, having worked for Luxottica Group and having been trained by a multi billionaire. One of the things somewhere along the line, they said, you gotta as you enter the world, you have to kind of find some kind of a branding thing,
Mhm.
personal branding. And now I'm become a journalist. So what the hell can I do? I'm 6'5", so that's a brand right there. I'm tall. And one day I'm a big Rutgers guy. So one day I saw my hat and I said, you know what?
Mhm.
No, that's my brand. I'm putting on my hat
Yeah.
and I wear it now 24/7. Well, I take it off because my wife hates when I wear a hat to bed. So I take it off, but otherwise it's on my head constantly.
Awesome.
And it
Awesome.
hasn't done anything to diminishing my hair, which it kind of has that Einstein look. It's just messed up. But anyway,
Also,
back,
also a Jersey guy.
yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Mine's utilitarian. It's when you can't see, it's nice to have a 3-inch bumper in front of you before you plow your face into something, which I've done multiple
By the
times.
way, that's really great.
Yeah.
That's a
So
great idea. I like that.
yeah.
Uh, Back to business. So tell me about the team which put this film together.
Yeah. So uh, employment, amongst the blind and low vision community is really, really not great. I think it's somewhere near 70% unemployment rate, which is pretty disappointing. So, not only for that reason, but just for the reason of, I think, having solid perspective on making this film. This film was made by a hybrid team of very talented blind and sighted folks, and we felt it was important to walk the walk, when making this thing, but we didn't have to compromise at all because we had really talented people.
Yeah.
We had an amazing composer who was blind, our sound designer, almost our entire audio description team. We have 3 blind producers on this movie. This was really, it was important, I think, to have that diversity on there itself. And I think it also, again, reminds people that you can hire from a broad spectrum, and you can bring in talented folks from everywhere, and you should really consider everybody for every job.
Simply brilliant. You never even conceive of all the things, hiring a balanced team,
Yeah,
and the blank, because you're sending that message. Wow. I'm sitting here like I'm absorbing what you're saying, and these are things I never even dreamt of.
yeah.
Uh,
And employment's one of the issues, one of many issues, but
yeah.
it's one of the issues we touch on in the film as well,
Okay.
and explaining some of the opportunities and challenges there.
And it's trying to
Okay.
message also to let people know if you're blind and low vision. I mean, I did my undergraduate and graduate in journalism, and the idea of working in film industry was something not even thought of. It was like, oh, well, you can just go be a writer, but you can't work in multimedia. There's not a lot of, they'll steer you a lot of times. You're a person who's blind growing up. They'll maybe say, go down this track and do this or do that, X, Y, and Z. Not a lot of people, it's hard enough to go to Hollywood and Los Angeles and try to break into the biz for anybody that, regardless of your abilities, in terms of people like my vantage and perspective, there's going to be even more people telling you no. I mean, people tell us no all the time about being blind, like, oh, you can't do this or you can't do that or you can't do whatever. But when you do something as lofty as saying, I'd like to go work in film or something like that, like the idea that like Stephen Letness, who's an amazing musician, did an outstanding job composing for the film. Worked with who was from Turkey, Bill, also helped on him.
Not Slough.
Slough did the
Kamal.
audio.
Sorry, Kamal.
Yeah, Kamal in Istanbul. But yeah, I mean, so there's so many creative minds that can add to a medium that's a visual medium, and it's exciting. Like just to be able to go around and tell kids like, hey, this is something you could do. I mean, you could move out to California and find work. It's hard for everybody, no
Yeah.
guarantees or promises, but it's a big enough industry where it's something to never say no to your dreams.
Yeah.
And I'd also just like to add that I have to give a lot of credit to AFB for even just taking that step. I mean, I think film is very much considered a visual medium, even though it's certainly meant for everybody. But uh, the idea, AFB's mission statement is not to make movies. That's certainly not part of the charter.
Uh-huh.
And it's hard enough for any organization or any person to get behind it. It's hard for people in the movie business to make a movie. But the idea that AFB's put out that kind of goal and said, let's meet people where they are. We recognize that media is being consumed at an insane rate right now. Uh, let's meet them where they are. Let's not make everybody come to us necessarily. Let's go where they are. Let's make a film that really speaks to the issues that are at the heart of what they do, and let's get it out to everybody, in a way that they're likely to consume it. I mean, I think that's a pretty bold step by an organization.
And what's been exciting about it though is like by the way you did the audio description has helped us. We've been advocating for 104 years for people that are blind. I mean, we know stories well. We invented the talking book in the early 1930s. That was an AFB creation, you know.
Mhm.
And long before there were, jazz records, we were perfecting the 33 and a third so you could get more words on it. So we've
Yeah.
always known that stories can be powerful and inclusive when they're available for people that are blind, but stuff that other people can use like audiobooks and things like that today. When you look at what audiobooks is today, it was all born out of a need for people that are blind. When we look at the way that audio description is kind of innovating, and I love, Bill, that you mentioned making this something that, let's make this better. Because from us, when we're advocating for greater opportunity for people that are blind, we think there's ways that we can have media that is more inclusive. If it's audio description, or if there's other ways to think about how we can create more sense perceptive mediums that are, traditionally anchored in the visual, but how can we make media in general more inclusive for everybody?
Yeah.
My head is expanding. No, I really, I'm like, by the way, I don't know if you noticed, well, I mean, I'm taking notes, I'm writing things down, because this is precious stuff. And so, it's just so mind expansive. Truly, I'm glad this all worked out. It's great. Um, what are some of I always like to ask this, some of the key learnings you took away from this experience?
Tony, do you want to start or?
I'll throw it to you, man. I got to think of that one.
um, I gained a lot of respect and perspective over an area that I had nothing, that I knew nothing about. And honestly, that's part of the fun of documentaries for me anyway. I think docs are just an opportunity to take a deep dive in a subject that maybe you didn't know anything about before. And so, I really learned a lot there. I think I had a lot of the same probably prejudices and, stupid misconceptions that maybe a lot of people do. And I feel like maybe at least a good percentage of them have been dispelled, and I feel good about that. But I think even on the collaboration front, as we were just talking about, I think it's really opened my mind about the types of people I want to collaborate with going forward, and really opening myself up to all types of people, not just based on disability, but again, age, I think is the thing these days. And I think, and obviously gender and race and all kinds of other things. I think just keeping yourself wide open to the possibilities, not to make a joke, but just the possibilities that are out there. I think that's I think that's a good takeaway for me from this project was it pushed my boundaries a little bit in the best possible way.
Okay.
I think for me, it would be the collaboration elements of it to really get, you know, as a producer coming on later at the end, I was given this thing that was in the most part, most of the footage was already shot, I guess, Bill, when I came on board. I know you were still trying to
Yeah,
do
we're still shooting some.
Dallas and LA and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But just the whole process afterwards, right? That you really get a sense um to how the sausage is made. And it's been, I took some film classes in college and broadcasting and stuff like that, but that was always the guy that they would give the the boom mic and inaugura it to me and say, here, yell speed when this, ready to roll or something like that. And that was back in the 90s. Like the things have changed so much just in media, but it's still storytelling. And that's been the great thing is finding out that, at the core, and it's been so, humbling to just really get to know and become friends with Bill, but to really sort of by walking alongside with him, having this production be made, to have that sort of curtain pulled back, to figure out just how many pieces there are to tell a story, how many people there are, but it when done right, it works. It really sort of it moves, and for us, it's about persuasive storytelling. How can we change people's perceptions about blindness? And it's inspired not just me, but our whole organization to get behind more about how can we use visual mediums, because like Bill said, I mean, we're not always going to think, it's not the first thing in our mind, the things that sighted people consume all the time, but the power within visual mediums has really made us as an organization at AFB try to find out ways to where it's even in our strategic plan now, and how can we use storytelling and multimedia and the visual elements to really just ultimately do what we're trying to do, like was what Helen did, just change the way people think about people that are blind or deafblind in the world.
Uh, a good tag in is what are your goals ultimately for the film?
I think, Tony, I'm going to tell them what your goals are. How do you like that? Um,
I'll
I,
take notes.
I mean, I've heard Tony say this before, and Eric Bridges, who's the president and CFO of AFB, I've heard him say this before, but you know, I think a lot of people go into a movie saying, how much money can we make off this thing?
Ah,
And I'm not saying that AFB doesn't need money, because it does. It needs money to support its mission and to do things. But I think the messaging behind the film is probably paramount to them. And so, I've heard this, I've heard both of them say this before, that their goal is they just want everybody in the world to see it,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, every dollar we would make on it, we're looking to try to get it on a distribution platform. We're talking to a couple places, you know, and that's going to ramp up more that we're sort of wrapping up our sort of life in the festival world. But, ultimately, our goal is to get it into classrooms so that teachers can use them as learning modules just to teach, and children can learn a little bit more about Helen Keller than, Eureka at the well moment, when she first learned how to communicate when she was 7 years old, the word water with Ann Sullivan, her teacher, and that it's just there's so much more that can be told, not just about her, but all people that are blind or have low vision or are deafblind. And so, how can we get this in front of people? And if it's in schools, curriculums, educational platforms, trainings with businesses and organizations. We did a big global thing that Bill, you were participating on with Google,
Yeah.
with employees worldwide as part of Disability Employment Awareness Month, and which is always every October. So, for us, it's just about outreach. So every dollar we're earning in this is just helping us get it out there in front of more people that'll help, you know, break down those misconceptions that make people not want to go out and look for jobs, making people not want to go out into their community and just sit on their couch the whole time.
that ties in with what you hope people take away from watching this. The goals and taking away is the awareness. And again, from my little vantage point, I can't even conceive. I can't I can't process how Helen Keller learned everything she learned with that disability. I don't process that. The other thing I have a really hard time processing and I can't understand is how Albert Einstein in 1900 without Google conceived of relativity. Same type thing. By the way, I think it's the same phenomenon.
Yeah.
How Helen Keller, and I equate what Helen Keller did to Einstein's grasp of the universe. Same thing. How? So this is one of the takeaways from
Yeah, I
what.
think some people just have drive, I think, and the rest of us benefit because of it. Like
Yeah,
they're just not going to give up. And they just have that drive to move forward and explore.
And think about it, for 7 years of your life, you're in a state of just confusion and chaos.
yeah,
But you're still human. You still have a brain. You still have the slate to develop cognition. And the moment that switch was flipped, where it's like the eureka moment with Anne Sullivan at the well when Helen was a girl, it is, when you follow that arc, that then she goes on to Perkins, which is the oldest school for the blind in the United States. Then she goes on to Radcliffe, and then begins to just, I mean, her curve of learning was just immense, which shows that, and it's kind of a metaphor that, we thirst for water. It was clear that, she was really thirsting for just uh, understanding
Yeah.
and to make sense. And so as soon as that light switch flipped for her in the sense of cognition and words and communication, it was just, I mean, she was, at a well, but she was drinking from a fire hose. She really was. And that was the way she was all the way till, till her death, when she just always wanted to learn. Anne was exhausted, and then Polly Thompson, who came on board after Anne Sullivan, her best friend, passed away in like 1936, and so, she was just nonstop. I mean,
Yeah.
she would have times when she would come back from like Europe or Africa or Asia and need to recover and recoup, but there was always a thirst that I think just in general humans can learn from, right? That we should always thirst learning and knowledge and information, because there is an endless well of things that
Correct.
we feed ourselves from out there in the world.
Correct. And this thing up here that sits over our shoulders wants to learn. It wants, hey, I'll be 80 in a couple of months, and I'll swear I'm better and sharper at 80 than I've ever been in my life. There's a thing called crystallized intelligence. Somebody 19 years old doesn't have the intelligence I have because I've lived 80 years longer, 70 years longer. So it's fascinating. It's just fascinating. Um, why why submit to the Garden State Film Festival?
For me, this is super easy. I used to say that I love when people give Jersey a hard time because I want them to stay out of my state. Um, I love New Jersey. I was born in New Jersey. I my first few years were there. I was at like 5, 6, 7 or something like that when we moved to Chicago. But my grandparents had a beach that house there my whole life. My parents both grew up in Madison. I was born in Morristown. My grandparents were there. I love New Jersey. I have nothing but affection for the state. So
Wonderful.
to me, I see Garden State Film Festival. I'm like, oh yeah, how quick?
Boom.
Please let us get into that because to me, it's amazing. I have to give a plug for Muller's Crumb Cake, Muller's Bakery in Bayhead.
I heard
Amazing.
about that place.
Their crumb cake is ridiculous. Please
I
go
heard
get
about it.
some. Go get a slice at the Sawmill down in Seaside Heights. The slices are about twice the size of your head, including the hair. It's yeah, it's just a good time. I love New Jersey. I'm really looking forward to being there. I'm going to be there for an extra long amount of time.
Oh, great.
And I think Tony probably feels a similar level of affection for
Oh,
Jersey as well.
totally. I mean, for me, it was the weekend getaways when I was up in New York City. It's nice to go somewhere that's not Coney Island. We got to step over people everywhere, but actually, you can actually enjoy the beach. But it's more just, I mean, Asbury Park with the culture and the music, but larger too. I mean, we had, Bill was coming to me, and as I was saying, yeah, okay, we'll spend that, and we'll spend that for festivals. I mean, this was one of the big ones for me because New Jersey in general too is just a haven for independent film, and I've always been, not a mainstream kid, an independent, love independent music, and I love independent film, and from everything just across the board, so many great stories have come out of New Jersey that are in that indie sort of circuit. I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan. Clerks was one of my first films in college I remember checking out, and that,
Okay.
the idea that someone could make a film for so little. I mean, so Jersey in my mind has always been just a great place for filmmakers. It's free from the the sort of weight that can be on your shoulders in New York City, and it's just a place where that you can actually explore creativity. So I'm so excited that we got into this one
That's great.
and looking forward.
I'll
Families coming up for it, so yeah, we're looking forward to it.
That's
I'll
great.
also say that one of our other producers, Bojana Koklia, she's based in New Jersey as well, and as are a few of our subjects from the film.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of Jersey ties here for
Okay,
us.
that's great. Where is the screening? Where when is the screening?
We are showing at 11:45 to 2 p.m. at Asbury Hall, Block TA10, Saturday, March 29th.
Okay.
And we are showing alongside a short film called Vienna, Suddenly an Angel, uh, by a first-time filmmaker. Well, I won't say first-time filmmaker, first-time producer, um, who is sharing the story of losing her daughter. And
Yes.
I have
Her name's Denise Wendler.
these, yeah.
I'm actually going to interview her at some point.
That's great. I had a chance to talk to Denise and so
Yeah.
did Tony, and she's terrific.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm really excited to be partnered with her on this thing, and I think it's going to be a fun block for all of us. It's gonna be a good one. You're definitely invited, Calvin. So I hope we see you there.
I
It's
I
on
want to be
us.
there. There was a movie. Remember the Titans, and one of their catchphrases. I'm a movie guy, so one of their catchphrases was "We're mobile, hostile, agile." And for the last couple of years, I haven't been mobile at all. Knee problems and stuff, so I haven't been able to get to the GSFF. I'm mobile and agile and hostile now, so I'd love to be there. With the last off-topic question, which
Yeah.
is such a perfect segue, because you guys have brought up two of the things I want to incorporate. Uh, um, as a journalist, a few years ago, I wrote a great essay, and it ties into what you both just said, and I'm kind of chomping at the bit here. Anyway, the essay I wrote is New Jersey has won its independence from New York and Philly. And if you really analyze it, from film, we're going to talk about that in a minute, but film, music, Bruce, Bon Jovi, Southside, I mean, Bruce is 2 miles down the road from me. Helped to give birth to Asbury Park, but every little aspect about New Jersey, we do stand alone. And I was involved. I'm involved. I did some writing for Dining Out, the Jersey Shore. It's a new magazine about food, and we stand alone on food too. You don't have to go to Manhattan or Philly anymore. We got unbelievable restaurants right here. Some of the best chefs. So that tied in. And here's the off-topic thing we could discuss. I'm an indie author. I hold up There's a Tortoise in My Hair, Journey to Spirit, with a Kirkus store. I'm an indie author. I've been an indie author. I love and support indie filmmakers. So last week I watched Academy Awards, and the big winner in just about everything was an indie film. With Sean Baker and best film, best director. He's a Jersey boy, and Best Actress, and that was made with a budget of $6 million. So my question, well, and also New Jersey, the other part of winning its independence from New York and Philly is we're becoming a real film mecca. Netflix in a couple of years is going to open up at Fort Monmouth, a $900 million studio.
Nice.
And then I heard some rumors that somebody else is putting $1 billion studio way down in South Jersey, near
Okay.
Maryland, I guess. South Jersey, and it's almost
Yeah.
near Maryland. Spielberg is going to be here next week shooting. That Bob Dylan
Mhm.
biopic part out was filmed here. So anyway, so my question is, it's a brave new world, according to Aldous Huxley, as a filmmaker. I think, in your opinion, is Honora, and that indie film is now a hallmark for indie filmmaking. Your comments?
On Honora specifically?
No, just in general, that the future for indie film.
Future for indie film. Yeah. Well, first of all, Brave New World is also the name of my favorite surf shop, and it's in Point Pleasant Beach.
Wow.
So there you go.
Wow.
Check. I've been shopping at that place since I was like, I don't know, 7 or
Wow.
something. So please go check that out. No, I think there's never been a better time to be a filmmaker in general. Tony's probably heard me say this before. when I was younger, I remember there was like the good camera and the bad camera. Even in the advent of digital, right? There was things that were good and they were bad. And there were just limitations. I mean, you can go back to Hitchcock and you can look at some things and you can say he was such a very deliberate filmmaker and chose every shot so specifically. But you could tell sometimes he was framing things tight because I think because he didn't like the limitations of the technology that existed right then. He couldn't, it was obvious it was a backdrop and he didn't want it to be a backdrop, but it had to be, kind of thing. Um, right now, one of the most amazing things is you used to wonder, like, how can we pull it off or can we pull it off? And now you don't have to worry. You can do everything. And so you just have to be able to articulate to your team what it is you're trying to pull off. And the answer is always yes. What I've found is that I'm rarely the person who's going to decide the how, because if I try and pick, it's probably going to be wrong. So collaborate with smart people. But I mean, when it comes to AI and when it comes to VFX and when it comes to, just, I mean, the editing programs are stupid. We shot this film on, I don't know, a dozen different cameras and we can color match the whole thing because like that didn't used to be an option before. You shot on a Sony and a Canon, you were like in deep trouble. But now if you can shoot both of them on RAW, and a Red and an Alexa and a whatever, and put it all together, and it's all going to color match. So it's things like that that just that lower the barrier to making great entertainment. And I think as you started this thing before about the Trump maybe the dicey times we're living in just in terms of communication. Um, I will say that I love that entertainment is a way that we can tell stories and we can communicate with each other and we can, reach beyond. We can still get messages across, whatever those messages are. I have the opportunity to do it in kind of still a safe environment where we can share stories.
Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
Tony, say it better. Say
Yeah.
something better.
No,
I'm
that's
I'm going to start from the beginning with just passion because it all starts with passion to tell a story, right? And this is one way to tell a story. And I think when you look at the world right now, like go back to Helen at the well. Um, there is no shortage of stories that need to be told right now. And with that, you're going to get more Noras. You're going to get more of these independent stories that are just compelling that rise up. And that is gold for independent filmmakers too, just to know that, you know, you may think everything is a sequel of a sequel of a sequel when you check out maybe what's on the marquee at a big box theater chain. But there's so many avenues for streaming and distribution now, and there's so much passion out there, especially right now where we're at in the world. On all across gamuts, a lot of stories that need to get told right now.
Yeah, that's by the way, Tony, that's just a great point. There's unlimited distribution right now. I mean, there's just a million places to distribute
yeah.
right now. You can self-distribute, you can do anything you want. You can just put your film up on Amazon without them buying it. You can put it on iTunes, you can do all
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Yes.
So that used to be a big barrier too. Like how do I get this thing out there?
Mm.
You know?
So it truly is a brave, wonderful new world that we're witnessing. Uh, hey, this was great. You know,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
this is absolutely great, and of course, I'm walking into this, and I had no clue, and as this is unfolding, and I'm beginning to read and learn, and then meeting you guys, this has been just absolutely sumptuous. That's one of my favorite words. I got that from Norma Ray, the under Norma Ray. Ron Liebman tells Norma Ray, "Hey, meeting you has been sumptuous. Hey, meeting you guys has been sumptuous. It's been great. Uh, um, um, I sit here 12 hours a day. My arms for my chairs kind of worn out, so I'm inviting you to come back, any shape, way, form, and talk about. Hey, I'm here." And then you and I, Bill, have a date to talk about Casablanca. Would love that. Unique and different. We could talk for a long time about that. Tony,
Absolutely.
and Bill, thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording, and I wish you only good things at GSFF. Truly, I'm going to stop recording, and we'll do a 2-minute wrap. But thank you so much.